"You're really willing to go to jail over $1. The bank manager said coldly inside the meeting room. Every person in the room stared at the old farmer like he was causing the most ridiculous problem they had ever seen. "If you keep this up, we'll have no choice but to call the police." The words were not meant as a warning. They were meant to end the conversation. It felt like an invisible door had just slammed shut in front of him. Nobody asked deeper questions. Nobody truly wanted to hear the answer. The old farmer stood silently, his cloudy eyes still sharp as they stayed locked on the stack of documents in front of him. He didn't react right away. His rough hands tightened around the worn papers. There was something strange in his stare, like he was looking through every number, searching for something hidden beneath the surface. Nobody in that room believed such a small issue could shake an entire system. To them, it was nothing more than a tiny banking error, an annoying problem not worth wasting time on. But their arrogance created a dangerous blind spot that none of them could see coming. He lived in a poor rural town somewhere in America, where the land was dry and time moved slowly. Old fields stretched for miles like forgotten memories. Every morning, he woke up at the exact same hour, following routines that felt older than the town itself. Every day, he worked quietly just to hold on to the last pieces of his old life. He didn't have much left to lose, but he still fought to protect what remained his house, his land, and his dignity. People in town treated him like a ghost. He walked past them without anyone stopping to talk. Nobody knew who he used to be before he became an old man silently surviving one day at a time. His small bank account kept losing exactly $1 without explanation. At first it happened once, then twice. Then it became a pattern. Every time he checked his balance, another dollar was gone, as if someone was testing how long it would take him to notice. In the beginning, he believed it was just a normal system error, a small banking mistake not worth making a scene over. But what he could not ignore was how perfect the pattern was. Too exact. Too organized to be random. Years earlier, he had borrowed money from the bank to save his family's old house. That house was more than property. It carried the memories of generations. But growing debt, rising interest rates, and the silence of the system pushed him to the edge. And in the end, being short by just $1 was enough to destroy everything without warning. Hard times kept pushing him behind on his payments. It wasn't because he didn't try. Bills came from every direction, squeezing him tighter every month. But to the system, none of that mattered. Late payments were treated like cold numbers on a screen, with no concern for the struggle behind them. On the final due date, he was short by exactly $1. The amount was so small it almost felt absurd, but it was enough to trigger the bank's entire automated system. No extra warning. No second chance. Just a rule enforced without mercy. The bank immediately activated the foreclosure process. Everything moved faster than he expected. No final phone call. No chance to fix the mistake. A few lines in a computer system were enough to turn his entire life into seized property. The house was taken without a single negotiation. Papers he had signed years earlier were now being used against him. Every explanation he tried to give was dismissed because, according to the contract, none of it mattered anymore. He left the home filled with a lifetime of memories in complete silence. No arguing. No begging. Just the sound of the door closing behind him, like the final ending to a long chapter of his life. A few days later, he returned to the bank to ask about the missing $1 charges. He wasn't there to cause trouble. He only wanted a clear answer. In his hands were carefully marked bank statements, every suspicious transaction highlighted line by line. The front desk employees looked at him like he was a problem not worth dealing with. Their eyes passed over him as if he didn't belong in the polished world around them. Nobody offered him a chair. Nobody truly listened. His questions were ignored in the middle of the cold banking lobby. The sound of keyboards, customer numbers being called, and everyday transactions drowned him out. His story became something the system had no interest in handling. He filed an official complaint, but no response ever came. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into silence. Every time he checked the status, it still showed the same words: under review. A bank manager finally warned him to stop causing problems immediately. His voice was sharp and final, leaving no room for argument. To them, the old man's questions were no longer simple concerns. He had become an annoyance that needed to disappear. The helpless look in his eyes slowly turned into suspicion. He stopped accepting vague answers and started paying attention to every small reaction inside the system. Everything felt too smooth, too controlled to be a random mistake. He drove out to visit an old friend living on the outskirts of town. The long, dusty road carried him far away from the cold rules of the bank. His friend had once worked in financial data analysis and knew the darker side of how these systems operated. The man also knew part of the past the old farmer had hidden for years. Their meeting began in silence, like both of them understood this was never really about $1. But the friend's expression changed the moment he heard the full story. The truth slowly came out. The old farmer had once been a federal financial investigator. A past buried under years of silence was suddenly pulled back into the light. The skills he once used to uncover fraud slowly started waking up again. The past he thought was gone forever came alive again. He was no longer just an old farmer standing against the system. He was someone who once understood exactly how that system worked from the inside. Memories of old investigations returned with sharp clarity. He quietly began reviewing every bank transaction again. He no longer trusted instinct alone. Now he relied on data. Bank statements, system logs, and account histories were examined step by step with careful precision. A strange pattern started appearing across millions of accounts. The same activity repeated itself again and again, not in one place, but across multiple banking systems. Every case shared one detail: exactly $1 had disappeared. Every account was losing exactly $1 in repeating cycles. The timing was too consistent to be random. It moved with the rhythm of a hidden algorithm running beneath the surface. That was when he realized someone had designed this system intentionally. He finally understood this was not a mistake. It was a controlled operation. There was no more doubt left in his mind. A massive financial scheme was happening inside the system itself, hidden in plain sight. The hidden profits had already reached tens of millions of dollars. $1 from each account seemed harmless on its own. But spread across the entire banking network, the total became enormous. And it had all been disguised as a small error nobody would notice. He sent the entire collection of evidence to a trusted federal investigation team. The files were encrypted and transferred quietly. There were no public announcements, only a silent signal that activated a much larger investigation behind the scenes. A nationwide federal investigation was launched almost immediately. Multiple agencies joined together and expanded the scope of the case. Massive amounts of banking data were pulled and analyzed at the same time across different systems. The bank quickly started trying to erase evidence from its internal network. Transaction logs were altered, and some records disappeared without explanation. But the cover-up began too late. Investigators were already collecting data faster than the bank could destroy it. The investigation team had already locked down the backup systems beforehand. The protected copies could not be overwritten or deleted. Every attempt to hide the truth became meaningless against a database that had already been isolated and secured. Federal agents moved in and locked down the bank's headquarters. Every entrance and exit was immediately placed under control. Employees were ordered to stop all operations and leave the systems untouched. The bank's director was taken in for emergency questioning. Within just a few hours, the atmosphere inside the headquarters completely changed. Control of the building shifted to federal investigators, calm, cold, and fully in command. The truth about the missing $1 charges was finally exposed to the entire country. Investigators released evidence showing a massive, carefully designed money extraction scheme hidden deep inside the banking system. People finally began to understand how sophisticated the fraud really was. Public outrage exploded as the full scale of the scam became known. News channels, newspapers, and social media covered the story nonstop. Anger spread rapidly when ordinary people realized they might also have been victims. The old farmer became the key witness during the trial. Standing in the courtroom, he was no longer the man everyone ignored. He was the one who uncovered the entire truth. Every statement he gave connected another piece of the fraud together. The court ordered the bank to repay all damages, clear the old man's debt, and compensate the victims. Silence filled the courtroom as the final decision was read aloud. A system that once seemed untouchable was finally forced to bow to the truth.